George Herbert Walker Bush became the patriarch of an American political dynasty, the likes of which has not been seen since the Kennedys. Bush was born into a wealthy Massachusetts banking family. At school, he was known as Poppy, excelling in sports and student government. On his 18th birthday, just after Pearl Harbor was attacked, Bush put off college to join the Navy as a pilot. He became a war hero, flying 58 combat missions in the Second World War, and was the only survivor after he and his crew were forced to bail out over the Pacific. Bush returned to marry his high school sweetheart, Barbara Pierce, and earn a degree in economics from Yale. He moved to Texas and made a fortune in the oil fields. Bush excelled in business, but struggled in politics. Initially, he hoped to follow his father, who had been a U.S. Senator. Bush ran twice for the Senate, lost both times.
I feel kind of like Custer, you know, there were too many Indians. Well, there are too many Democrats in some of these counties, I guess.
He finally won a seat in the House of Representatives in 1966, followed by a series of posts seemingly tailor-made for a presidential resume. UN Ambassador, chair of the Republican National Committee, the first U.S. envoy to China, and director of the CIA. He served 2 terms as Ronald Reagan's vice president, where he was forced to deny any role in the arms for hostages deal known as the Iran-Contra affair. And his nice guy image backfired when the press stuck him with the label of wimp.
I, George Herbert Walker Bush, do solemnly swear that I will...
But his own presidency was defined by military strength.
Just 2 hours ago, Allied air forces began an attack on military targets in Iraq and Kuwait.
The U.S.-led Operation Desert Storm pushed Saddam Hussein out of Kuwait in mere weeks, a stunning victory. But Bush's decision not to push into Baghdad in 1991 set the framework for the war that would define his son, George W. Bush's turn in office, a period during which the U.S. military fought entrenched battles to take and hold Iraq after ousting Hussein. There were other foreign successes. George H.W. Bush presided over the peaceful end of the Cold War and led the way to the reunification of Germany. He reestablished Middle East peace talks when there was no dialogue and helped negotiate the North American Free Trade Agreement with Canada and Mexico. But he faced trouble at home, criticized as out of touch with regular Americans in a struggling economy. After a tough deficit battle with Congress, he broke his biggest campaign promise.
Read my lips. No new taxes.
Raising taxes proved to be the biggest mistake of his presidency. With Ross Perot splitting some of the Republican vote, Bill Clinton trounced Bush at the polls in 1992. In retirement, the former rivals often worked together, raising money for victims of the Asian tsunami, Hurricane Katrina, and the earthquake in Haiti. He watched his son George Jr. win the presidency in 2000 and then besting his record to win it again in 2004. His other son, former Florida Governor Jeb Bush, would not be so successful. He lost the Republican presidential nomination to Donald J. Trump. Both sons would watch as their father completed tandem skydives on the occasions of his 80th, 85th, and 90th birthdays.
Just because you're an old guy, you don't have to sit around drooling in the corner. Get out and do something. Get out and enjoy life. Yes,
advice from a war hero, diplomat, president, and father, whose legacy is shaped not just by his own achievements and shortcomings, but by those of the family he leaves behind. Ron Charles, CBC News, Toronto.
And I want to show you some video from just a few moments ago. This is outside the former president's home in Houston, Texas, and there's someone who is paying respects to the late president, and we'll be seeing more scenes like this through the evening, no doubt about that. You may be having the same experience I am looking through my Twitter feed. I'm surprised at friends of mine who I don't even think of necessarily as being political, some in the United States, some in Canada, various political leanings, but all speaking with great respect and grief to an extent on the news of the passing of the former president. It is interesting, and some may find it comforting at a time of such polarized politics in the United States, the respect the 41st president had among prominent Republicans and Democrats. And here's an example of that. Moments ago, former President Barack Obama writing, "America has lost a patriot and humble servant in George Herbert Walker Bush. While our hearts are heavy today, they're also filled with gratitude." And the current U.S. President, Donald Trump, who has had his differences with the Bush family, as we just saw in Ron's piece, but he issued a statement in the last few minutes, as you'd expect from a sitting president. Here is some of Donald Trump's statement. "Melania and I join with a grieving nation to mourn the loss of the former president. Through his essential authenticity, disarming wit, and unwavering commitment to faith, family, and country, President Bush inspired generations of his fellow Americans."